This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully we have some big wins early this season. That'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
Hit the lights and lock the doors. Welcome, everybody, to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene on this Thursday, September the 26th. I am James Crepea, the Oregon Ducks beat reporter for the Oregonian and Oregon Live. That's where you can find all my work covering the Ducks on a day-to-day basis. And yes, obviously, while we are in the midst of football season, a first bye week for the Ducks, you can also find my coverage of all the other Duck sports, so whether that's men's basketball, which will have its preseason media day on campus tomorrow, or women's basketball, which will have a media day at some point, I'm imagining probably next week. Both will go to Pac-12 media day in a couple weeks. And then baseball has fall ball coming up. Softball has fall ball coming up. All those sports, yes, I'm responsible for all of that. So you can find all my work covering the Ducks in all of those 5 sports and more on occasion when I have the time, if I can manage to cover.
Yeah, because you have so much time. You're just such a slacker.
Yeah. But yes, so you can find all of that on OregonLive.com. We will discuss one of those stories that I wrote today in the 5 o'clock hour. But in between now and then, we will chat with Kurt Cragthorpe. Again, covers the Utah Utes for the Salt Lake Tribune. He will join us in about 15 minutes as Utah, coming off a tough loss at USC for the umpteenth time. Now, Utah losing in Los Angeles. How are they going to rebound? How are they going to handle things? In particular, if Huntley and Moss are dinged up and unable to play, how does this Utah team respond at home against Washington State? And frankly, how does Washington State recover? Well, Kirk can't necessarily give us insight into Washington State entirely, but in the matchup with Washington State, he certainly can. We'll chat with him at 4:15 at the bottom of the hour. For the umpteenth week in a row, I swear he's going to be a co-host by the end of this.
He's taking my job.
He is really. I mean, I when I go down to Los Angeles for the game on November 2nd, I'm going to have to give Antonio Morales dinner on me, to say the least, because he has shown up week after week after week because of the games that SC has played. Very meaningful. Obviously, the talk at the beginning of the season being Clay Helton's job status. Even last week, Clay Helton's job status. Well, now USC coming off a win with its third-team quarterback against Utah at home. Now heading into yet another big game, and this one with Washington. We will chat with Antonio at the bottom of the hour on that. And chat with, as always, news and notes from around the league, etc. We'll also have Mike Vorel at 5:15, covers Washington for the Seattle Times to get that side of that game. So we're trying to give you a little bit of pretty much every side of the big Pac-12 games each and every week. That's what we're looking for. So obviously, Oregon State we have quite well covered. Stanford is not a tremendously covered program, so not a lot of people to talk to over there entirely on a day-to-day basis. And to be quite honest, I didn't think a lot of people were going to be really tuned in to UCLA-Arizona talk this week. You may watch the game. And God bless you if you do.
It might be another. I think it might be another Washington State type situation.
It very well could, because Arizona's a wide-open offense, and they put up some points, and UCLA, if Dorian Thompson-Robinson really has turned a corner, and if that offense actually has signs of life beyond what was just the bizarro game of all time, sure. Let's just not forget that before the comeback, which I'm not taking anything away from, it was tremendous comeback. Incredible, really. But let's not forget that before that happened, that Washington State was up in bunches, is all I'm saying. That in order to have a comeback of that magnitude, you had to first get behind by that magnitude, is all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Now, again, that doesn't take away from the comeback. The comeback's tremendous, incredible. Again, 99.9% chance of winning for Washington State.
Like twice, wasn't it?
Yes, at both 42-17 and 49-17. But the point is, it was 49-17 at one point. Just remember that.
Yeah.
Yes, they came all the way back, but I'm not sure that they're going to be able to pull that off on a weekly basis, is all I'm suggesting. So we'll have those men on again to chat about all those respective teams. But we lead off today actually with news From John Wilner and his latest report. There will be more on this and other topics next week. I hope to line up John to talk about this actually hopefully on Tuesday, because according to his report here, which we'll discuss in a moment, he will have a podcast where he spoke with Larry Scott recently, and the podcast will be up on Tuesday. But one of the most newsy nuggets that came from it, John wrote up very quickly, and that being that the ongoing talks regarding a sale of an ownership stake in, Pac-12 Media Co., this new holding entity for the media rights for the league, up until the end of the grant of rights deal in the 2024 realm, 2025, 2020, that window of negotiation, that the Pac-12 is still interested in taking on a partner, potentially. However, they have decided against selling any ownership stake in those media rights to a private equity firm. Still looking for what they're characterizing as a strategic partner, just not a private equity firm. The difference, now this is a little bit of semantics, but there is an important distinction here. Why? Well, because as Scott told John Wilner of the San Jose Mercury News, and obviously the Wilner Hotline reports that he puts out for them that you can check out over at the Mercury News website and other institutions, but that's who pays him, so that's who I'm crediting. Scott said the presidents and chancellors have ruled out an arrangement with a, quote, pure financial institution, close quote, that would receive minority ownership of the media rights company, and in return each school would receive, a bunch of money up front. However, the Pac-12 continues to examine partnerships with media or tech companies that could involve selling ownership for cash, but would better position the conference media rights in the 23-24 negotiating time. Quote from Scott, we've narrowed the field. It was clearly they, but he's referring to, I will never call the presidents and chancellors CEOs. That's just, you're not a CEO.
No.
So, fine. The presidents and chancellors were not interested in doing something with a pure financial institution, even though we had a lot of interesting offers at that kind of valuation we were hoping for and really great terms. They don't want to do something with a private equity or financial firm. What does that all ultimately mean? Okay. In other words, you are not getting a hedge fund investor to come in to the Pac-12.
Which is probably
or anything
good.
like it. Which is, as Wilner has reported previously, more at length, and those of us who understand some of the nuance and ambiguity and complexity of the situation have expressed over the nearly year that this discussion has been going on. While the premise is not unprecedented, it does happen in other leagues around the world, not very much in the United States, but around the world, the idea of selling media rights to a third-party equity partner that isn't an owner or things like that in the league, that doing so with public institutions, and yes, a couple of private ones with USC and Stanford, but mainly public institutions across numerous states and et cetera, with a private equity partner like a hedge fund. I use that as an example, but there are others. It doesn't have to be called a hedge fund, just to be private investment in general. That the percentage in earnings kickback that firm would want upon exit would be rather substantial, to say the least, and it would come before, in all likelihood, probably before anything else from the league. The equity partner would agree to come in, give you however many, hundreds of millions of dollars, and in return would receive a, let's call it 12, 15, 20% return on investment automatically in writing. You must give this person a 20%, guarantee return on investment before the league and its member institutions receive any of the respective return on investment. That it basically, the equity firm is taking the gamble that the 20% that's locked in writing is better than whatever the percent return will be than from the holding members. Now, the league, in that premise, would be making the gamble that the return would be even better and that the 20% will look like a bargain years down the road. Here's the difference. Upon exit for a private equity partner, you have to worry about those kind of crippling terms, and that partner is leaving. And as I asked Larry Scott back in May at spring meetings, would that in any way potentially jeopardize the tax-exempt status of the league and the 501c3 status of the league? And he had said, the lawyer said no, that he's been advised from counsel that would not do so. And I said, well, logic would dictate that a investment partner who invests to receive only a return on investment and then leave, by definition, that is for profit. You are claiming to be a not for profit. I am not a lawyer. I only have one of my 3 degrees in political science. I didn't go beyond that.
But you stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, right?
Well, I stay only at Marriott, Steve.
Okay.
But I know a thing or two, and I talked to a few people who know a thing or two, and I'm saying I'm not guaranteeing any of those lawyers are wrong. I'm just saying I would have avoided the headache. And here it appears that whether it be just the appearance of things because of the political climate at various different schools and universities and who's the private equity firm who would come in and what's their investment strategy and every other holding that they ever hold and do business would become under scrutiny and tied into the Pac-12, all so that you could profit a few pennies compared to the bottom line budgets at these 12 institutions, which does dwarf the athletic budgets by multitudes. You don't need the headache if you're a president and chancellor. You don't. So they're steering clear of that. Now, they could still bring in what they're calling a strategic partner, i.e., a media company who could end up being the grant of rights holder by the end of this whole thing in 23-24 anyway, which makes more sense because that partner isn't backing out of the deal.
Right.
Fox and the Big Ten are tied at the hip. ESPN and the SEC are tied at the hip. ESPN and ACC are tied at the hip. ESPN and whatever the heck they're doing with the Big 12 and the streaming thing are tied at the hip.
CBS and the Western Athletic Conference, Mountain West.
Yeah. The CBS with the SEC Game of the Week, but not the entirety of it.
Right. Whereas with
the other leagues,
West,
they have the whole deal.
Yeah.
So, and you have others. There are others, obviously, in NBC and Notre Dame with the home games at Notre Dame, and et cetera. So, bottom line, those are television partners that when you have a television full network behind it, where the league has a stake, but the media company has maybe the controlling stake, 51-49, well, then, yeah, they're not leaving. They're not going anywhere. It's just to tie things in all ways possible. If insert the name, I'm not going to speculate, and I don't want to use one as a placeholder because the minute that I say one, then everybody goes, oh, well, then the Pac-12 is working with X, and I'm not saying that that's what's happening. Just a media company. You pick the name in your own head. I'm not going to say which one because they work with multiple, and like I say, I'm not only going to pick one because then it gets sideways.
Well, we can talk about what offers have come in the past. You know, you had DirecTV when they were in their negotiations.
That's
saying,
no. Broadcast network, Steve. Broadcast network.
Okay.
Network, yeah. I'm talking about if a broadcast network that currently broadcasts games, take your pick of which one that might be.
Okay.
Comes along and offers X many millions for whatever the percentage stake that the Pac-12 is looking to give up at the moment and profit from at the moment. Comes along. That's all. Now, the interesting part is that the terms of that I want to know is, okay, if you do that with what you're calling a strategic partner until the 23-24 grant of rights negotiations, what if you flip partners in 23-24?
Well, it would probably be something like the ESPN offer a while back where they wanted to tie it up through, was it 2036 or something like that?
Yeah, but then they passed on it because of those reasons.
Right,
but that's a different thing. I'm talking. The league has stated they passed on that one because they did not want to forego the 23-24 cash-in day.
Right.
They didn't want to take a lower number now. They want to take the higher number in 23-24.
Right.
Fine. I'm saying in the short term, if you're still looking at this equity stake with a strategic partner, what if that partner, who is still in the traditional media company realm, whoever they may be, what if that partner is different than the partner that comes along in 23 and 24? Is my question.
Right.
And it may not be. It may be the same. But if it's different, you can't have conflicting partners. What could be interesting is what if they go in the more technological, less wired telecom media product and media partner, and one of those entities comes along.
Like an Amazon Prime.
Like an Amazon, Google, it's Facebook, all those entities, YouTube, etc. I forget the acronym because it keeps getting bigger because more companies come along.
Right.
What if one of them comes along in the short term, gives you the money, gets some boost, maybe gives you a different avenue to broadcast games in the short term, and then if you get a different traditional television partner in 23-24, you might be able to still keep both.
I think it would have to be dependent on the inventory that's available, wouldn't you think?
Depending on what's all involved. So bottom line, it's an interesting story. It's an interesting tidbit. It's an interesting development. There's many more questions to come both about this particular development and the entirety of it. Remember, when Larry Scott was on this program a month ago, he said he wanted a decision from the presidents and chancellors by year-end 2019. And probably a month before that, because I am telling you, he wants to be able to go in to Santa Clara at Levi Stadium the day before the Pac-12 championship game and be able to say with absolute, resolute definity, this is what we are doing on this topic.
Yeah.
He does not want to walk in there that day and say, we still haven't decided. He wants to say and pound his chest, we're doing this. And then a week later, when he goes to New York, along with all the other Power Conference commissioners at the Learfield Summit in New York, he wants to continue pounding his chest that this is what we're doing, one way or another. So that's an interesting development in that story. Again, we'll chat with John hopefully next week after he releases his full podcast with Larry Scott on that and more. Coming up, Kirk Crackthorpe of the Salt Lake Tribune on the Utah Utes. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene.
Fox Sports Eugene is your home for Portland Trailblazers basketball. Join new play-by-play voice Travis Demers on the call as Portland celebrates its 50th season. Preseason action begins October 8th exclusively on Core 1050 and 95.7 Fox Sports Eugene. Now back to the James Crepea Show presented by Dairy Mart. I am really looking forward to the season this year.
Oh, I think it's going to be quite a good one, obviously. They've got quite a bit coming back. They've added quite a bit. Yeah, I think it could be quite an exciting season. And it might even give me reason to start watching the NBA regular season again for the first time in a long time, to be quite honest.
Well, I think it helps that
being closer to a team geographically and, again, really just having a cause to do it because, yeah, I wasn't all that far from Atlanta for a while, but it might as well have been a different country, to be quite honest. I just didn't care.
Well, being the Blazers affiliate, I know I can get you a couple tickets to send you to a game.
That'll help. But like I said, they're fun, and they're a fun team to watch. I did watch them in the playoffs. They are a fun team to watch. They're fun personalities. So, yeah, hey, why not?
And the Warriors, because of the injuries, not saying, otherwise, it's because of the injuries, the Warriors are kind of coming back to earth at least this season.
Yeah, but they're not the only ones
to
worry about.
True.
The two LA teams are pretty good. They're pretty well stacked with talent, I'd say.
Well,
they've done well for themselves.
The Lakers' talent continues to get hurt. They lost Boogie Cousins, so
I only kind of viewed him as a complimentary piece, to be honest. I'm not minimizing anything. Like it doesn't mean anything. No, it's something, but I just thought him as more of a complimentary piece to the entire operation there.
Yeah.
I didn't think he was going to be leaned on for, a huge chunk. But yes, maybe we'll get into more of the NBA in the weeks ahead as the season draws closer. Blazers Media Day coming up also, I believe.
Monday.
Yeah, so I was going to say next week.
Yep.
So we'll have more from them. We're going to have Kirk Crackthorpe from the Salt Lake Tribune, but I think he had to step away, actually, for main work obligations. So we like having Kirk on. We might be able to still squeeze him in at some point today, but at this point, may have to just delay it ever so slightly, which, again, not a problem. I perfectly understand that those things do arise.
What, work?
We will have Antonio Morales on in just a few minutes at the bottom of the hour, who covers USC for The Athletic for the umpteenth time. Antonio joining us because, yes, it's just been a lot of big games for USC and for Clay Helton to start this season. We'll have him shortly. And again, Mike Vorel of the Seattle Times covers Washington, joining us at 5:15 to go over the latest there, because it is USC and Washington, and that's why we're having both those sides on this week, because of the top 25 games that are out there. We already had yesterday reporters from Virginia and Notre Dame on, and briefly, because I know that Virginia football is not really moving the needle very much on the West Coast, nor should it, to be quite honest. But they do have a quarterback who started his career at Arizona State, who's from Arizona, and Notre Dame always moves the radar and moves the needle, no matter where you may be. So that's one of the top 25 games. But the only other one is USC and Washington. It's just not a whole lot in the top 25 this week of matchups of ranked teams. Now, I say again, Arizona State and Cal, to me, is a matchup of ranked teams. I know Arizona State fell out, but
it's still a good game, and it's got great implications.
Yes, and that happens to be a Friday night game, too, so that helps because it's a standalone, well, sort of standalone. There's another game, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
More or less on its own. And no, I really don't think out here that anybody's watching Penn State, Maryland. No. I don't. No.
But I think people are going to watch the Packers game tonight.
Yes.
I saw some prop bets come out from Chinook wins that were kind of fun looking that I was looking at.
Yeah, I will say they have dabbled into, and they have done a couple of interesting things in that realm. So Chinook wins, obviously the first, and I believe still to this point only.
Yeah, as far as I know, they're still the only ones.
Legal sports betting establishment here in the state of Oregon. I skipped past the story actually to get an update of when the lotto system is
actually,
along.
John mentioned that today. Canzano on his show today, that a bulletin has come out saying that they've got approval from the banking partners on the app on all of the testing that they've done, or they're waiting to hear from the banking partners on the app, and that they may now launch the Scoreboard Live app is what it's called for the Oregon Lottery. For those of us who have been around a while, it was called Sports Action. The Scoreboard Live app they're talking about launching now as early as October 7th. But
all right, so that's not that far.
But again, it's only going to be NFL. They're not going to have any college games included in the app.
NFL and the football realm and the other sports.
True.
Once they get up and running, I'm sure we'll have NBA and NHL.
If you could sit there from watching a Blazer game or listening to a Blazer game on KORE and playing around with your app, and you can bet on how many free throws Damian Lillard hits in the first half.
Side tangent.
Yeah,
I saw something today, and believe me, I couldn't tell you a single player in the G League, but something today about the G League experimenting with a one free throw counts for all the points system.
I didn't know if it was one free throw counts for all the points, but they were just gonna one free throw attempt per, instead of a 2-shot foul, you're only getting one shot. But I didn't know if you were getting all the points. You're only getting one
shot, but you're getting both either 2 or 3 points on a shooting foul.
That's kind of weird. I mean, I guess they're doing it to speed up the game, maybe?
Yeah, I really didn't realize that free throws is what was slowing down the game.
Well, at the end of the game, a lot of calls, a lot of foul calls.
That's different. That's different. It's entirely different.
But it's a strategy for some coaches.
That's the point.
Now.
Is it's inherently part of the strategy of a game that's scored that way.
But you're saving time.
But throughout the course of the game, that's what's going on. So in the first quarter on a shooting foul. No, I'm saying that the point is that philosophically, of course, it's not happening. But when you apply a rule like that in the first quarter, shooting foul on a 3 is going to be one free throw to make. I don't know, man. If anything, that makes fouling on a 3 now like a mortal sin. Not that it wasn't bad enough before, but you never want to foul somebody on a 3 now, because now they'll go to the line and take one shot from the foul line to hit 3 points.
Yeah, but how many guys, how much emphasis has there been on free throw shooting in the last few years? There seems to be a lot of guys that can't hit free throws.
All the more reason, my point of why this is why are we now giving the people who can't shoot worth a lick the benefit to potentially hit just one as opposed to having to be more consistent. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I don't get it. I know about end of game stuff. I get it. Well, look, that's the way the game is played.
Right.
If you don't want to do that, then tell baseball that starting pitchers have to go 8 and 9 innings. Let's wind the clock back to a different era. I mean, you can't do it.
No, but
it's the way the game
like
is
I
played.
said, I think they're just trying to get it into a better window, for length of time for their games.
I want somebody to print out for me a season-long analysis of length of games and how much within the length of that game was spent on free throws versus timeouts, including television timeouts, versus reviews versus other things. And I will bet any sum of money that replay review at the NBA level, this is, I could care less about the feeling, about that instant replay reviews and just the media timeouts are what is blowing it away. But again, that's a side topic. We will chat more about the NBA next week when the Blazers have their media day next week. We will now welcome on, in a moment, Antonio Morales of The Athletic. You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We now welcome back to the program on the Davis Roofing Hotline. Antonio Morales of The Athletic covers USC, and at this point it might as well be the Antonio Morales Davis Roofing Hotline because he has joined us week after week here as SC has been in many big games, good, bad, and otherwise, and USC coming off. It was an ugly win down at the Coliseum last Friday night by way of the caliber of play on the field, but a win nevertheless, and that's really what matters to the Trojans. What was your big takeaways from what was a bizarre evening with Reggie Bush back and Urban Meyer in the house and all the rest down at the Coliseum last Friday, Antonio?
Everybody was getting ready to pour dirt on Clay Helton last week, and I just had like a hunch that they'd be more focused this game, more like emotionally engaged than they were against BYU, and I think I predicted on your show last week that I thought they'd win. I didn't know they'd win with Matt Fink. I don't think anybody could have predicted that. So it was a strange game. They got outrushed 247-13. I think Utah had the ball for about 38, 39 minutes in that game. So USC committed like 11 penalties for like 117 yards, but Utah kind of they showed they kind of weren't ready for primetime yet. That's the big question a lot of people had. I don't think it went away after that game. They had plenty of opportunities to take control of it, and they just couldn't get a grasp on the game.
Give us an idea of, because you mentioned Matt Fink, and this is now the third quarterback for USC. Fink is absolutely expected to be there again because Slovis is out. First, with Slovis, what is the word on just a timetable for any return for him?
Yeah, he wasn't cleared to practice as of yesterday. We're in touch with Clay Helton in about an hour or so. So we'll get more word then. I don't think it'll be like a long-term thing, but USC, JT Daniels, he went into the concussion protocol after, taking a big hit against Utah last year. And he was out for about a week, and he returned 2 weeks after he suffered the concussion. I would assume they would do the same thing with Keaton probably, keep him out this week and have him come back during the bye week and have him ready to go against Notre Dame. So I think, that might be the route they go. Matt Fink obviously is a more mobile guy than Daniels or Slovis. He doesn't have the best arm. I think that belongs to Slovis as well. He just let his receivers make plays last week, and that's what they did against Utah, who started the game in man. That wasn't the wisest choice against USC's receivers. So it'll be interesting to see how Washington plays them.
And you mentioned those playmaking receivers, and USC's receiver core is probably the deepest in talent in the league. I'm not sure very many people can argue it. Now, whether or not you want to say that Laviska Shenault is the best receiver in the league, purely, he might be. He very well might be. He had a rough week last week. He was covered quite well, but Colorado still managed to win against ASU. But Michael Pittman Jr. is firmly in that conversation, and frankly, by the way the production has been this season, I think Pittman Jr. has overtaken Shenault in that capacity. Where do you think? I know you see him every day, Antonio, but you're starting to see him against the league. And frankly, Utah is one of the better secondaries in this league. And their secondary came out, and Julian Blackman said, I can't repeat it on the air what he said, but suffice to say, they didn't play well against one of the better receivers in the country and in this league. What do you see from Michael Pittman Jr., who right now he ranks 11th nationally in receiving yards per game? Like I say, I think he is firmly in the conversation as it stands for the Biletnikoff Award.
Yeah, I think that's what everybody's kind of been waiting to see. We've all seen the talent, and we've all seen the highlight plays, the jump balls, the contested catches over some DBs throughout the years, but we haven't seen the real production. I think last year he had 41 catches. That was a career high. I think this year he already has 31 or something around there for 400-something yards. He's already, on pace to surpass his totals from last year. I think it was 41 catches, like 700-something yards. He's already well on pace to surpass those. And I think that's what he needed NFL-wise. He was a guy who was kind of deciding last year, should I come back, should I go? But he didn't really have the production. And this year now he's starting to get it in this air raid offense. And the past 2 weeks, I think he's put up 19 catches for around 340 yards, something around there. So you see the production that was kind of missing. It's starting to come now, and this is basically a contract year for him to show kind of the NFL scouts what he can do, and he's making the most of it.
Oh, and you look at some of the splits for Pittman, that 11th ranking in receiving yards is yards per game. That's just a gross number. But that includes a group of 5 players who are playing against far inferior competition. You start looking at numbers only against Power 5 opponents. His number in those games ranks 5th nationally. Now, obviously, Jamar Chase at LSU is way, way, way up there. But point is Pittman is firmly in the conversation there. You look at certain situational stats. He leads the country in receiving yards on third down. Of his 6 catches on third down, 5 have resulted in first downs. 4 are for 15-plus yards. 3 are 25-plus. To say that he is one of the best playmakers, not only for SC, but one of the best playmakers in the Pac-12 in the country is not overstating the case. He is absolutely at that level of player. Now, it helps that his quarterback is getting him the ball, as you mentioned, but he is able to go and get it. Is there really any matchup, because this is a Washington defense who has a very talented secondary, though reloading? What do you think about the matchup that he's going to face here from this Washington secondary? Because Utah's was good, but it didn't play well. What do you think about this matchup that he's going to face with Washington?
I think Washington will probably approach it differently. I would expect more zone against USC, against Pittman and its receivers. That's how BYU slowed them down a little bit. They dropped 8 men. I don't think Washington will drop 8, but I think they'll use more zone than what Utah started with last week. Utah tried to start with man, and Pittman beat them a couple of times. Pittman, Vaughn, and St. Brown, they all beat those those coverages, and it kind of got Utah out of their game plan, and they weren't really used to what they were doing. And then obviously you saw miscommunications and just flat out misplays by Utah safeties on some jump balls that you thought should have been probably batted away or intercepted. They allowed Pittman to grab the ball and go 70 yards for a catch. So it kind of got them out of the rhythm. Washington's had more success against the air raid in the past than Utah has. I know Leach's system isn't the same as Graham Harrell's, but Washington's seen this kind of stuff before, not with USC's athletes, so it'll be interesting to see how it works there. But they've seen this before, and I think they'll come with a better approach than Utah did.
You mentioned the USC run game last week, which that was the part of the offense that was just absolutely atrocious. I mean, that was awful, and that was beyond bad. I mean, that was unbelievably bad. As good as Utah is, that kind of number is just almost unforgivable, even sacks included. What was the explanation exactly from the coaching staff mainly for just not really putting a whole lot of players in position to have a lot of success? I mean, they were just getting crushed.
Yeah, I mean, Graham Harrell, all he pretty much said was like, well, Utah has good players up front. They're going to control the line of scrimmage sometimes. I think a lot of those yards, there's a lot of negative yards on Stephen Carr's fumble. I think they lost about 15, 16 yards on that play. And they probably lost another 10 yards on kneel downs at the end of the game. So it's probably somewhere around 30 yards they were rushing for. But, Utah controlled the line of scrimmage, and I'm interested to see how Washington's front, if they can dominate the line of scrimmage like Utah's and BYU's were kind of able to. They don't have the rep that Utah's defensive front does. I think most people kind of consider Utah's defensive front to be one of the best nationally, especially and certainly in the league. I don't think Washington's is looked at in the same light, even though they dominated BYU pretty well last week. So I think it'll be an interesting matchup to see if USC's offensive line can respond. I would assume they'd run the ball more this week, or try to, considering it'll be Fink's likely first start on the road. So we'll see what they do.
Chatting with Antonio Morales of The Athletic. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at Antonio C. Morales. You mentioned Fink, Antonio, and this one being what would be a pretty tough environment to have to make this start. And again, like you said last week, nobody would have expected that he would have been in there and leading a win in the first place, and it happens early, the injury to Slovis. Now to potentially have to make a road start, and likely road start for this matter, at one of the tougher environments in the league to play in for a road team. How do you think he handles the task at hand of handling the road environment, handling this first opportunity to – I know last week was almost a de facto start. It was so early in the game. But nevertheless, knowing he's the starter, going in he's the starter, he knows it. Handling a tough environment, handling one of the better defenses by way of both personnel and coaching. And, again, a secondary that is just – it's coached very, very well. That's a really good Washington defense. How do you think Fink handles all this?
I don't think he can go about it the same way he went about it last week. Last week, he was just throwing up 50-50 balls, and Pittman and Vaughn and St. Brown were just making miraculous catches. I don't think he'll be able to do the same thing against Washington. He has kind of that gunslinger mentality. Last week when he was in there, it's kind of like, well, this is my chance. Let me just do whatever I can, and let me just leave it up for these guys. But this is a big game in the Pac-12 for USC and Washington. I think he needs to be more careful this week. But he's a risk taker. When he got in the game against Utah last year after JT got concussed, he was kind of running around without really regard for his body, and ended up fracturing some ribs. And he missed the next game and missed a couple of weeks for it. So he's a guy who doesn't really show much fear. And so I say he shouldn't go about this game the way he did against Utah, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did go about it the same way.
We'll get you out of here on this, Antonio. And again, thanks again for joining us for the umpteenth week in a row, and we'll happily give you the week off next week during USC's bye week. You were right on last week and how you thought it would play out, and that SC was going to pull out a win, and despite all the things kind of going against them at that point with the loss to BYU. How do you see this one playing out with Washington?
I think Washington wins probably by double digits. Talanoa Hufanga's questionable right now. He's been in the concussion protocol all week, and he has an AC sprain. He recorded 14 tackles against Utah last week, and he was USC's best defensive player. Elijah Griffin's he hasn't been full go in practice, and he's one of USC's starting corners. You have Slovis out. Then you have the emotional high after last week, and I think Washington just needs this game more than USC does right now. Washington really can't afford an 0-2 start in Pac-12 play. So I think this goes Washington's way.
Appreciate you as always, Antonio. Enjoy the trip up to Seattle, and we'll chat with you in a couple of weeks when it is SC and Notre Dame.
All right, thanks for having me, man.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. We thank Antonio for joining us for, seriously, it's like 5 straight weeks. So thank him for giving us another go there. And, yes, look forward to having him on again for the Notre Dame week, but that is in 2 weeks, so we will give him a rest next week unless something just totally bizarre comes out, which, given that it's SC, it's entirely possible that something totally bizarre comes out. Frankly, they could name their new athletic director next week. That would be totally plausible. And in which case, we may need to talk to Antonio.
I'm fired. It's just going to be you and Antonio.
It's just like,
every
man,
day.
like, yeah, like I say, at this point, yeah, dinner for sure when I go down there in November is most definitely on me with him because, yeah, unfortunately, we've had to lean on him quite a bit for all kinds of SC insight so far. But yes, look forward to having him on.
But he's been awesome about coming on.
He's been great. No, he's been terrific. And they practice around now, so he's had to sometimes come on at right times. Ordinarily, he joined us in the 5 o'clock hour. I had to bring him on early because they have, like you said, he was going to talk to Clay Helton after practice in about an hour. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But, yes, again, appreciate him as always. Some other news for you. If you are a Dish Network customer, and yes, we're talking about Dish, not any other telecom provider. Today, we are talking about Dish Network. If you are a Dish Network customer, some news today that Dish has dropped its Fox channels this afternoon. That being Fox, regular Fox broadcast channel, FS1, FS2, and the Big Ten Network.
But not the local Fox TV KLSR.
No.
No, okay.
No, I'm saying they have dropped Fox broadcast.
I think they're talking about the
national broadcast channel. Now, yeah. I don't know how you would be able to keep your local affiliate without.
Yeah, it's separate.
It's light. No, I'm saying so it's light on when the local affiliate's on, but it's light off around all other programming that's not the local news.
No. It's what it is there's a national network that for people that are in rural areas where they can't say they're out of the range and they can't get off the air the local Fox affiliate. So they'll get like the Fox affiliate out of LA or New York. But otherwise, if you're in a market where they can get your local Fox affiliate, it does not affect your local Fox affiliate. So it's just that channel. So your local, like KLSR, if you're of Dish and you're in Eugene or Springfield or Corvallis, you're still getting KLSR, the local Fox affiliate. That's not what they're talking about.
And what I'm saying, Steve, is, all right, and that may be true. I don't know. I didn't ask.
Well,
but what if it's not on... If it's NFL Sunday, which is what this is all about,
yeah.
I don't think you are able to watch on Dish Network anywhere in the country as of right now.
Yeah, no, the local affiliates are separate agreements to the national.
Right. So the only thing that really matters here is the programming that the millions of people are watching. If you want to watch your 6 o'clock local news, more power to you. And the 11 o'clock, great.
Right, but
that may be there for you.
No,
but the broadcast feed from the national network for the games, which is all this is about in the negotiation between Dish and Fox for FS1, FS2, Big Ten Network, and Fox.
You're talking about the Sunday ticket. No, they don't have Sunday ticket.
I'm not talking about Sunday ticket, Steve.
Okay.
I'm not talking about Sunday ticket. Nobody said Sunday ticket.
But I think...
Here's the Fox statement.
Okay.
Dish Sling is at it again, choosing to drop leading programming as a negotiating tactic regardless of the impact on its own customers. Dish Sling elected to drop Fox networks in an effort to coerce us to agree to outrageous demands. While we regret this is Dish Sling's preferred approach to negotiating, we remind our loyal viewers that the Fox services are widely available through every other major television provider.
Okay.
That is the Fox statement. Now, the Dish executive, Andy LeCoyer, issued a statement. All of these, by the way, courtesy of John Oran at the Sports Business Journal, because he is all over the story and obviously deals with the business side and negotiations between all the networks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. He had the statement from Dish executive. Fox's actions are profoundly anti-customer. Fox is raising prices and turning its back on its public obligation to provide channels to consumers for free. It's clear that Fox cares more about padding its bottom line than serving its viewers. To add insult to injury, Fox pulled its channels right as viewers head into the heart of the NFL and college football season. We asked Fox to stop punishing its own viewers so we can focus on reaching a fair deal. More from Dish. Affected customers can view NFL games using an over-the-air antenna or stream local and most primetime games for free on mobile phones and tablets via the NFL app. Those are the various statements from the two sides. Obviously, there's a lot of hyperbole involved on both of it. They also gave a list of the Fox broadcast stations that are now dark on Dish Network. Now, they do not list anything from the major markets in the state of Oregon as of right now. Could it become that way in the next 24, 48, 72, 96 hours, etc.? hey,
I think
these are two sides clearly at war with each other.
I think it might affect the Fox owned and operated stations more than it does the local affiliates.
Yes.
So there
but
are
the Fox owned and operated local station list, which includes, just small little towns like Atlanta, Dallas, Houston, New York, Philly, etc.
There are no Fox owned and operated in Oregon, so that wouldn't affect your local.
But
affiliate.
in a lot of the major markets, there are. So that is what is going on between Dish and Fox. So according to John Oran here from a few hours ago, even though Dish Network dropped Fox-owned stations, customers that have NFL Network will be able to watch tonight's Eagles-Packers game, because that is one game. Reason why I mention it, because that is a game on Fox. As of now, a league spokesman said the game also is available via Amazon, Twitch, and NFL, and Verizon apps. And according to a source for John Oran, this morning Fox executives told Dish Network that it could keep its channels live while negotiating a new deal. Dish rebuffed the offer. So remember, the Dish statement was that Fox is coercing them. Fox pulled its channels even amid the negotiations. Oran reporting that part of Dish's statement would be an out-and-out lie in that case.
I could go for a week on how this works and being
the
in
back and
TV
forth
for 20 years.
It's grotesque because, look, the worst hidden tax in sports is and really in all of consumerism in this country is that the broadcast networks, and again, Fox just happens to be in this negotiation, but we all know that every single network has been caught up in this at some point because they start to have cable channels that are affiliated with them, particularly in the sports realm. So everybody's involved with it in some way. There's ESPN, ABC, there's NBC and NBC Sportsnet, there's Fox and its deal, CBS and its deal, etc. Everybody's got it, and then they throw in, if they have news sides, they throw those into for more leverage in the negotiation. And the hidden tax is what's passed on via the telecom provider, whether that's the Dish, DirecTV, Comcast, Charter, whoever your cable provider is, whoever, passed along that they make the rate higher on a monthly basis per consumer for every one of those telecoms. They cut the profit away from the telecom passes on to the customer. You on the back end, you just find out your channel is or isn't available. You don't even deal with the fact that actually the person who's trying to negotiate for you, more often than not, is actually your telecom company. But everybody says that whoever your telecom company is, sometimes, and look, they're profiting off of you. I'm not telling you that they're innocent in the process, but so that they don't raise your rates ultimately in the end, you hope. Everybody complains about the cable company, or if you have a satellite provider, or whoever, and everybody's cord cutting and this and that because they think they're the worst thing in the world and they're charging all the money. Well, fact is, a large portion of what they charge does go to the broadcast channel providers that are on their broadcasts, that are on what they're carrying.
That's not 100%
a large portion.
accurate.
Not all. They obviously are allowed to profit. We are in America. They are allowed to profit and make business, but a very large portion does go to, because sports channels carry a huge carriage fee. Huge. And here you have Dish and Fox are in this butting of heads over Fox, FS1, FS2, and Big Ten Network in this case.
Right.
So we will keep you updated on that particular negotiation. And while you are still able to see the local affiliates all throughout the state of Oregon, for those who may be traveling at any point in any of the other major markets where Fox is a owned and operated affiliate, those you would be in serious jeopardy. On the local ones, on the FS1, FS2, Big Ten, we'll keep you updated. You're listening to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene.
This is the James Crepea Show.
Most of the time, just eat, play, sleep, and then again.
Oregon Duck beat reporter for the Oregonian, James Crepea.
Yeah, hopefully you have some big wins early this season. That'll mean you've been a better commissioner.
He graduated from Ohio State and covered Auburn. We'll try not to hold it against him. KORE 1050 and 95.7, Fox Sports Eugene. Here is the James Crepea Show, presented by Dairy Mart.
We open the 5 o'clock hour on the stories of the week, really within Oregon's program, which, again, obviously, since it's in its first bye week of the season, there's not much going on a day-to-day basis that is terribly newsy outside of our discussion with Mario Cristobal yesterday. But obviously, look, they're going out recruiting as a staff. That being one topic in particular that Mario addressed yesterday a couple of times, where they've kind of changed their approach on the recruiting front a little bit as far as in-season recruiting. Not as far as who they're going for. I'm talking about the logistical side of it. Who they're targeting, how they go about communicating with them, that's all the same. But the approach of logistically in-season, how they want to use their visits, that Oregon has changed this year so that they are really going all out during the 2 bye weeks. So this bye week and during the November 9th bye week between SC and I believe it's ASU after that, that is when, either Arizona or ASU, that is when Oregon is going all out. That is when the coaches are traveling separately on the way back from the game. So in this case, from Palo Alto in the Bay Area, the coaches went elsewhere on Sunday so that they would be in position on Monday to visit with recruits on Monday. And then they came back during the week so that they practiced on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And they have left, I believe, if they haven't left just yet, they will be leaving very shortly. I'm sure, frankly, they probably have left by now at 5 o'clock today in order to have visits tomorrow with recruits. And that being virtually the entire staff. So they are trying to do that rather than throughout the course of the entire season send out 3 or 4 coaches per week, every week on a Friday, whether you're at home or on the road. And to be honest, I perfectly understand it from Oregon's perspective because, hey, everybody's got a budget. Everybody's got a budget. And when they are recruiting, even let's just say the West Coast players, because with East Coast and the travel, that goes without saying. That's just a very hard logistical challenge there. But let's just speak to the California-based players in particular. Well, look, if one of the assistant coaches is flying commercially and not private, which when you're sending out that many coaches at a time, I guarantee there aren't that many private jets. They don't have that many. Nobody does, quite honestly. So it's not a knock. Well, you have to fly commercially. The idea of going out, Friday morning? First thing Friday morning and missing any walkthrough or anything with the team so that you can then go out and recruit Friday night so that you can then fly back first thing Saturday morning, as long as everything goes off without a hitch, by the way, to get back either here to Eugene or wherever it is that Oregon's playing. That's a tall order, man. And then you expect that coach to be really, really sharp on game day after all that. That's a tough deal. That is a tough deal. I'm not telling you it's impossible. I'm just saying it's a lot. It's a lot to ask. Are you really getting people at their peak level of performance when you're doing that all the time? As opposed to using a bye week so that you can send people out on the front end of the week and the back end of the week to focus really exclusively on recruits. There is an in-game strategy and things like that that are being compromised in any way, or rest that's being compromised in any way related to and around a game. And then, all right, yeah, still recruit during game weeks, just not in-person visits and evaluations is all. So that was one topic that Mario addressed. The other, as far as more on the field, more pressing topic that came up that I know fans have been very, very wound up about, despite a 21-6 road win at Stanford, is Oregon's run game. And this is something that I explored a bit on OregonLive.com earlier this afternoon. You can check out the story. I kind of flesh it out a bit with a lot of statistics. I'm not going to regurgitate it all to you here and now because there are a lot of numbers, and that doesn't exactly make for terribly entertaining radio to just run off a bunch of numbers for you. But pretty much, as I state in the story, take your pick of the rushing statistic, and Oregon is down year over year. And in some cases, obviously, we're talking on a per-game basis. I'm not talking about gross because I'm not comparing 13 games to 4. Thank you very much. I'm talking about more on a per-game basis and rate of conversion basis and those sorts of things. Oregon's just not playing very well on the run game. And, yeah, it's only 4 games, but frankly, 2 of those games were against opponents that they were supposed to pad stats, and as we all know, they really didn't do that very much against Nevada and Montana on the ground very much. They really didn't. Not the players who are they going to be leaning on most. So, all right, let's take those out even, and it gets worse when you only look at Auburn and Stanford. Now, Auburn and Stanford, so you know, and I know everyone wants to rip Stanford to shreds. If you only look at Power 5 versus Power 5, so performance of Oregon against those 2 teams and then those 2 teams against only Power 5 opponents so far. So in Auburn's case, that would be Oregon and Texas A&M. In Stanford's case, that would be Northwestern and USC and Oregon, but not UCF. Auburn and Stanford both rank in the top 20 rush defense-wise against Power 5 opponents.
Wow.
So everybody who wants to rip Stanford in every which way, I'm not telling you, and I'm not making the case for Stanford, I'm just telling you, just be conscious of what exactly it is that they've faced too here. Okay? That doesn't mean that Oregon, who has a pretty strong run game, shouldn't be performing better. And that doesn't mean that Oregon, who struggled mightily dating back to the Red Box Bowl, shouldn't be running better. I'm just telling you the caliber of their opponents has been pretty damn good too. So just remember that, okay? Before you raise every red flag and sound every alarm, just some context. Again, if this was coming against Oregon State and Arizona's defenses, I would tell you, yeah, that's a mighty big problem. But it's not. It's come against 2 of the top 20 run defenses against Power 5 teams. But here is what Mario had to say on the run game in particular.
We're off, we are. We're out of sync a little bit. And it starts with, making sure that we're on the same page. We are, so that's not an issue. Technique and fundamentals come into play. If the box is loaded, we still got to find a way to make some yards, and it really falls on all of us. So schematically, we have some good things. We're also working on some different things to create some wrinkles, to create some eyewash that help us achieve where we want to get to. But we know it's not good enough, and we take a lot of pride in that, and that's what we're working on in the bye week, and we expect to have better results going forward.
So what Mario is speaking there with when he says eyewash, he means about motions and things that are just going to try and get guys out of position and things like that, different either formationally or mainly motions, jet sweeps, things like that. Now, I didn't even ask, and frankly I meant to, but we just ran out of time with Mario on Wednesday. We were chatting with him. But one thing that it's related to the run game and that involves C.J. Verdell, but it's not running exactly. The thing that's frankly most glaring to me right now about Oregon's run game that's missing is Verdell has barely been used out of the backfield at all. I know it's only 4 games, so I don't want to, make it into something it's not. And by the way, in one of the games, he only played 1 half, and the other one he only played 1 quarter. So let's not, again, make it bigger than it is. It's really about 2+ games. But he hasn't been used in the passing game virtually at all. He has 3 catches for 20-something yards. Now, last year, it's not like he had, a gargantuan number of catches, but he did have over 300 yards receiving. There were only 2 backs in the country who had over 1,000 yards rushing and 300 receiving, and he is the only one at the Power 5 level. I'm sorry, but the young man's versatility is not being maximized right now. That is a fair criticism. If you want, even if you would say the run game portion of it is just tough sledding because Stanford's going to run out there with loaded boxes, and hey, Auburn's D-line, they may not have disrupted that pass game very much because of the way Oregon was getting the ball out, but hot damn were they disrupting the run game. Sure. But C.J. Verdell has not been a target almost at all in the passing game. Last week he wasn't.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Haven't they been using him more for pass protection?
And rightfully so, because he is so clearly the best option there. It's not even close. And with Cyrus Abibi-Likio out last week and the second half against Montana, that stresses that part of the position even more so. That doesn't mean he can't be an option out of the backfield and you just go empty and say, all right, it's on the line and maybe 1 or 2 tight ends to try and protect Herbert here. But to me, you've got to get him more involved in the passing game. And when I say more involved, I'm talking about a guy who can get 2 targets a week. That's about all you need. I mean, 2 or 3 targets a week. 1.5 is all I'm saying. And look, last week is the absolute wrong example to be coming off of because of the time of possession, the way Stanford was playing, all those things. But he had 24 of the 25 carries for the running backs. He just wasn't targeted at all in the passing game. That's been, to me, the more glaring thing of all. But I get how some of these other things are happening. I also get that Oregon does have a good line and that they have played well individually at many of those spots. So it's kind of incongruous. Like, for fans, you go, all right, wait a minute. Our O-line's playing well. Quarterback's faring well. How can you say that all these things are working, yet the run game is playing as it is? I understand that. So that's why I write the story that, hey, yeah, if you break down certain numbers, though they have played 2 top 20 run defenses against Power 5 opponents, they are currently ranked 97th.
Wow.
Against Power 5 opponents in running yards. Wow. 75.5 rush yards. You look back at last year, now we're talking about 2 games versus 10 games, so the sample is a wee bit bigger, including an onslaught in the Civil War that padded a lot of stats, but also a Red Box Bowl that very much went the opposite direction, which I think does carry into this statistic in my own mind. But to look at it relative to last year, that's 75.5 rushing yards per game that ranks 97th against Power 5 opponents is down from 169, which ranked 44th last season. You are talking about over 90 yards per game.
That's a lot.
That's
a lot.
Ton. You are down more than you are producing. That is seriously alarming. Now, not to the extent that, like, blow it all up deal because of the caliber of opponents, but it is still really alarming there. And here is a second line from Mara because, yes, several of us asked about the run game. Here's what he continued to say.
The running game comes with a lot of things, particularly when you run open edge runs, right? You don't have a tight end. You make runs go towards a 2-man surface. Teams are playing odd tight, start bringing double edge pressure. You're squeezed out. You're thinned out. Calls for the ball to be spit out there, right, in the RPO game. Calls for the quick game to come into play or screens, something of that nature, or throwing the ball down the field. And we had to do that at times. And other times, you know what? Sometimes you're outnumbered and you're out-leveraged, and you just got to come up with a play. You got to create a hole. You got to run your feet through contact. So the things that we're working on fundamentally and technically will certainly help. In terms of wrinkles in that, wrinkles are always going to help. You work on them during the bye week, but we feel confident that the issues that we have had or the lesser productivity that we've had in the run game, that we're going to fix it during the week and be a better football team.
We welcome back to the program Mike Vorel of the Seattle Times, covers the Washington Huskies. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Vorel. Welcome back to the show, sir. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, the Huskies have certainly taken care of business, Mike, against Hawaii and BYU. I'd say this was widely expected, though last week, because BYU is coming off an overtime win over USC, really wasn't entirely sure what to make of it. I know Washington was favored pretty heavily, but really entering it, I didn't know entirely what to expect. And boy, the Huskies went out and really proved a point and wanted to make a statement in as many ways as they could against the BYU. And I certainly think they did. What were your takeaways of these past 2 weeks where, yeah, look, I mean, this is a team that did lose to Cal on its home field in that bizarre weather-delayed night game a couple of weeks back, but in the non-conference games that it has since, this is a Husky squad that is more than taking care of business.
Yeah, no, I think the most impressive part of all of that is just the offensive production that we've seen the last couple of weeks, where Jacob Eason has been pretty much everything that a UW fan could expect from him. 10 touchdown passes, 2 interceptions. He completed 24 of 28 passes against BYU, just on the money, accurate, confident, reading his keys, fitting balls in the tight windows. And they've been able to run the ball too. So their offensive line has been playing well. They've got a bevy of running backs, and they've got, a potentially elite quarterback. So it leads, the lead story is the offense. Defensively, I think, is still a young group, and it's a group that gave up a fair amount of passing yards against BYU. But the positive is that where they were waiting a couple weeks for their defense to force some turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers in each of the last 2 games. So if you can roll offensively the way that they've been rolling and then force a turnover here or there, you're going to be in good shape.
USC is coming off a really, really bad running performance, albeit in a win, so it's easy to get over, but they came off a just horrific running game. And, yeah, they lost some yards and a fumble, and they took some knees and stuff, but ultimately, even if you threw all those negative yards away, they didn't even I don't even know if they topped 50 yards at the end of it on the ground against Utah. Washington is usually also a pretty stout run defense. How do you think on the ground part first and just containing this USC offense, how do you think Washington stacks up in that aspect of the matchup?
I think they'll do okay there. It's kind of hard to know because this UW defense has been a little bit inconsistent where they gave up a bunch of rushing yards in the second half against Cal. They haven't really done that since. They were okay. They were pretty good, actually, against BYU, although BYU's starter, Tyson Williams, went down in the first half there, so that might have affected some things. But I think, when it comes down to USC, you may be asking about this in a second, but it really all revolves around the air raid that they've installed there. They've got talented running backs, no doubt, but I think UW is going to be focused on limiting the explosive passing plays first and then, kind of working off of that.
For sure, and that does segue perfectly. Look, this is the third quarterback with Matt Fink here for USC, and credit to him for stepping in and playing as he did last week. But as we spoke with Antonio Morales earlier of The Athletic, who covers USC, he said, look, there were so many of those that were jump balls that, look, he was winging it, and SC's receivers, mainly Michael Pittman Jr., went out and got it. And credit to that young man, too, for coming down with the ball over and over and again. But I don't know if he can afford to do that again against a Washington team who is at least somewhat prepared for him compared to a Utah team who, frankly, probably didn't prepare very much for the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, there's no doubt. I think that there's a couple different wrinkles to it, or perspectives you can kind of glean. On the one hand, like you said, Jimmy Lake is one of the best in the business, and he's going to be preparing for this kid. And it was, this is still, despite the numbers, a third-string quarterback who could not beat out Slovis, who was a true freshman, and Akito came in as a pretty low 3-star recruit. So I don't think we need to be building this kid into something that he's not right away. But on the other hand, Michael Pittman Jr., Tyler Vaughns, and Amon-Ra St. Brown are all, the truth. They're all legit, and they're going against a UW secondary that's pretty unproven. So do we know for sure that they won't get those jump balls again? I don't know, but I certainly think that there's going to be some opportunities for UW to get a turnover or two, especially at home.
You mentioned all the big names in that SC receiver core, and I not to discredit the other two, but to me, Pittman's numbers in virtually every situation and in every split are pretty darn remarkable. He is putting himself firmly in the conversation for best in the conference, if not one of the best in the country. How do you think Washington will go about covering him with, like you say, this is a reloading and somewhat unproven secondary, albeit coached really well. How do you think they go about trying to contain him?
I think it's just going to be tough because when you have the amount of weapons they have and the guys that they trust, where they have 3 receivers who at some point are probably going to be drafted, it's going to be hard to key in on one guy. In terms of UW's corners, you've got a guy like Keith Taylor, who's a junior, who brings some of that length and kind of can potentially combat that, but he's sort of struggled with pass interference penalties and things of that nature. I think if you're Jimmy Lake, on the whole, you got to trust your guys. I mean, they have a ton of talent in that secondary, and we're just going to kind of see how it shakes out. But I don't think you're going to be able to take a guy like Pittman out of the game. It's going to be about trying to contain them. And UW has been one of the best teams in the country when it comes to keeping everything in front of them and limiting those big back-breaking touchdowns. I think they've only given up one pass of 30 yards or more so far this season. So that's certainly going to be tested on Saturday.
What is the latest on Salvon Ahmed, who is right now in what has been a really bizarre and topsy-turvy start to the season for everybody in the Pac-12 running the football? I mean, some of the best backs from a year ago are not even in the top 10 in this conference rushing right now. It's really all over the place. But he has clearly taken over and very much solidified himself. But he didn't play last week. What is the latest on him and his injury status for this weekend's game?
Well, I mean, Chris Peterson doesn't ever say much of anything beyond the fact that he's week to week. I don't think that they regard it as being a really serious injury. Whether that means he's going to be out there on Saturday, we don't quite know. But I also think, on the other hand, that they really are legitimately confident in the guys that they have. You lost Ahmed last week, and Sean McGrew stepped in and ran for 100 yards, and Richard Newton, a redshirt freshman, has 6 or 7 touchdowns already this season, and is kind of a red zone threat for them. So they like their guys, and I think they feel like if they don't have Ahmed, you'd prefer to have that guy, but they're certainly not going to feel like it's some kind of an emergency if they have to go with McGrew and Newton once again.
Jacob Eason had, and I'm not going to knock him too badly for it because the way that Cal game played out, it is what it is. The weather was atrocious. It would have been really difficult to throw the ball throughout that whole game. But bottom line, he completes 60% of his passes. That's good. The total yards, I'll forgive that, and even the interception for that matter. But fact is, the numbers, albeit an incredibly small sample against one of the best secondaries in the league, weren't real good against the best competition he's faced so far. This is probably better competition, certainly, than Hawaii was, and probably even than BYU, but a very young USC secondary. How much better do you expect Eason to be, where he may have struggled under all those conditions against one of the best secondaries in the league, but now he's facing you talk about Washington being a little bit unproven. USC has got freshmen all over the place in the secondary. How much better do you think he's going to be able to perform, just statistically speaking, against this SC secondary?
I think he's going to play well, and I do think that it's a little bit of misconstruing the situation potentially to say that he played poorly against Cal, and I'm not saying that you're saying that, but if you watch the game, he's 18 for 30, and I think there was 6 to 7 legitimate drops in that game, and you change if most of those passes are caught, and those are passes that hit guys right in the hands. I mean, it's a different game, and they probably win that game, and his numbers are certainly different. And that's not a fluke. That's something where, there have been questions about UW's wide receiving core for a while now. But in terms of Eason, I mean, he's been accurate, in getting the ball out of his hand quickly pretty much all season. And I think there's a confidence there at this point where he's starting to really understand this offense. And the way that he was rolling last week and the week before, it's hard to imagine USC stopping him. They may be able to slow him down. And the way to do that is to get pressure on the quarterback. UW's got a really experienced offensive line, but if USC can pressure him and make him uncomfortable, then you've got some opportunities to do damage. But in the end, I think at home he's rolling. I think that Eason's going to have maybe not BYU numbers, but another solid, if not spectacular day.
With all that said, Mike, it certainly sounds like you're leaning one direction here. How do you think this one plays out?
I think the number that I had sort of settled down was 34-28. UW, I could probably be convinced to go a couple points in either direction. I think that USC, the way that their offense is set, they're going to score some points. They're going to get it into the hands of their playmakers. But, I think on the other side, UW's offense really has been clicking on all cylinders, and UW has been able to force turnovers in each of the last 2 games. I think they'll be able to do both of those things, and that'll kind of the turnovers will kind of be the difference.
Appreciate you, Mike. Thanks for joining us once again.
All right, see ya.
You're listening to the James Crepea Show on Fox Sports Eugene. The Packers and Eagles are underway in Green Bay, and there is a medical situation on the field here involving one of the Eagles players, I believe. It may be one of the Packers. I got to see. This is a really hard hit from.
Was that Bennett? Was that Bennett that made the hit?
This was a really, really hard hit. This comes on a punt return, a Packers punt return, where the initial contact,
Shepard
came up. Frankly, it's inadvertent, but that's a helmet-to-helmet hit in and of itself. But there is a player down in Green Bay. They've got the card out, and I think they are carting him off in what was, again, a really, really hard hit here on this Thursday night game. early in this game, by the way. I believe this may even come after, it had to be virtually the opening drive. We're only 2.5 minutes into the game. So I would surmise that this literally came at the end of the opening drive on a punt return that this injury took place.
So it's Jamal Williams that's on the ground, according to the graphic. That is a absolute helmet-to-helmet hit. He was being held
Williams.
up. He was being held up by a linebacker.
In the process of being tackled.
Yeah.
And another Philadelphia defender comes in bad enough that he hits because, look, he's got to make a play too. But the strike zone, look, I'm not telling you that he went out there headhunting. Bottom line, strike zone was too high. There's no other way around that.
Ooh.
The strike zone was high, and he hit him helmet to helmet, and this man is being carted off the field. So this is clearly not a good situation at all in Green Bay. It comes at the very beginning of this game. So we'll try and keep you updated from what I can find out from Ryan Wood, who we had on yesterday, and others at Lambeau Field. But at the start of this Thursday night game, a thumbs up from Williams. He's being saluted by his various teammates, and some of the Philadelphia Eagles also going over. But, again, a brutal situation there on what was just I'm not going to call it a dirty hit. It wasn't, but it was a bad hit. It was a very bad hit on one of the Green Bay Packers players there by one of the Eagles defenders. Hard to shift gears from that because, that was just plain ugly. No way around it. Now, the defender came over to him, spoke to him to express, I'm sure, some remorse for the situation that Williams now finds himself in, because that was a brutal hit. That just flat out and simple, like I say, that was helmet to helmet, and there's no way around that. Let's put it this way, folks. In the college game, that would have been called targeting. That's just is what it is. Inadvertent, but you want to talk about forcible contact to the head or neck area. That's textbook definition is what it is. Again, really hard to shift gears from that because of just the seriousness. You hope not severity, but just seriousness of the situation in Green Bay with that one. But we do shift gears to Oregon State and its game against Stanford this weekend. Jonathan Smith speaking. He was talking a little bit about the Devin Williams situation, and while he didn't address Williams specifically or individually and a couple of questions about him, he was asked a little bit about the whole premise of going out and trying to get prominent transfers via the transfer portal and some of the selling points that Oregon State has, and this is one of his more thoughtful responses on the entire topic.
I think we got a bunch of selling points. I really do. Of the offense, and if you're an offensive skill player, you're looking for. I think what we're putting out on tape is a great situation, but also the environment here at Corvallis, playing in this conference, the type of people we got around, relationships of current roster always helps. So it's all involved in recruiting.
So that was what he had to say on the topic as a whole. As Andrew Nemec is reporting for the Oregonian and Oregon Live, you can follow his story, and I'm sure many other stories on the topic of Williams' recruitment at the moment. There is a lot of murkiness at the moment of what exactly is going on here. And I'm not about to jump into the thick of it because I am not the least bit knowledgeable. I'm just passing on my colleagues' reporting on the topic. But Oregon State did put out a statement that Devin Williams has set to enroll and join the Oregon State program. He has, this is as of 5 p.m. Wednesday, Oregon State released a statement that Williams is set to transfer to Corvallis, and he is officially added to the roster at this point. Since Williams has left Oregon State and is in Los Angeles, Oregon State stands by its release, saying that he is set to enroll in Corvallis. Now, according to at least one source close to Williams, this is according to my colleagues, so I'm just literally reading the one sentence from his story directly. At least one source close to Williams indicated his recruitment may not be over.
What?
So, Because depending on what exactly you sign, because when you're so whether or not Williams signed a National Letter of Intent, NLI, at USC or not is irrelevant. You do not sign an NLI when you transfer. You sign a financial aid agreement when you transfer. And there's other documents too, but I'm speaking strictly to the things that most fans know about. Okay. Yes, obviously it goes through the compliance thing, and there's a whole bunch of legalese and things like that on that side from the process, so that a school can add a player to its roster and acknowledge his presence and existence publicly, and as Oregon State has done. But there are means by which a player that may have done all of those things at one institution may be able to still back out of that arrangement and do something else. I'm not telling you that that's definitely what's happening here. Oof. I am not spoken to Devin Williams or anybody near him. I am passing on the reporting that is done by my colleague who works with recruiting and what has been a complicated recruitment of a prominent transfer within the league in the first place. So all I'm saying is that story may or may not be over with already. I don't know that. It is now a topic of great conversation, particularly within the state, because, yes, Oregon was a program and potentially maybe even still is a program that may or may not be involved with Devin Williams. There's a lot of certainty in that statement.
Can you imagine if this plays out and for some reason he wound up at Oregon instead of Oregon State? Just the added vitriol to the Civil War.
Well, again, he wouldn't play in it this year.
No, it doesn't matter because it's still just a recruit that, for all intents and purposes, was there.
Right.
I mean, that would be,
right. That's
drama.
Yeah. Hey, we've seen this elsewhere in the country this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guys who they're set to go to one place, then they set to go another place. Then the safety, maybe not go another place.
The safety that was coming to Oregon.
Chris Steele, cornerback, who was going to come here, and then he wasn't going to come here, and now is down at USC along with many other freshmen in the secondary there. So you've seen it. It happens. It's all part of the process. But what may happen thereafter? Again, I can't speak to every hypothetical here. I just laid out the situation, told you what my colleague is reporting who deals with recruiting and has sources on that end that I simply don't because I have enough on my plate. But
we might need some popcorn is what you're telling me.
I'm just saying that the situation apparently is not 100% completely done and over with just yet.
Wow.
Not that it's going to change, just that it's not ironclad yet. That's all. Apparently. Allegedly. Always more to come. So, on the recruiting front, stay tuned to that on that particular topic. But Jonathan Smith was also asked about personnel, again, heading into this weekend's game with Stanford. He said Jamar Jefferson, Tyjon Lindsey, Jordan Whitley should play Saturday against Stanford. That was the expectation all week long, as we heard from Nick Daschel earlier in the week. My colleague also at the Oregonian and Oregon Live told us that on Monday. Does not think that center Nathan Eldridge will be able to go. Again, that was what the expectation was on Monday, so not much really changed there. But certainly good for the Beavers to have Jefferson, Lindsey, Whitley all back in the lineup. Kind of goes without saying, but yes, a very big boost there, in particular with Jefferson and Tyjon Lindsey. Now, you look at some of the matchup in numbers here for Oregon State and Stanford. And again, I say you have to bear in mind that Stanford has played 3 Power 5 games, and the Group of 5 game that it played was UCF. So the caliber of opponent and statistics against Stanford are a wee bit different
right.
than the opponents that Oregon State has played, with mighty Cal Poly involved in the process, and Hawaii, and obviously, yes, Oklahoma State. But if you look at only the Oklahoma State game, and I know that's not fair, we're dealing with a small sample. Well, yes, it's a small sample because it's early in the season. Yes. We're dealing with small samples. Well, Oregon State's total defense is still not very good. And Stanford's, though it appears bad in a lot of other ways, but if you look only because they've played Power 5 teams, Stanford's total defense ranks 3rd in the Pac-12. When you take the UCF game out, and I know people want to say, well, you can't do that because UCF's that good. Hey, I don't get to determine who's in the Power 5 and who isn't, okay? I have no say in the matter. I'm talking about merely on paper, statistically, under certain conditions. I don't get to lay out and pick out what I like and don't like. So that is the reality. UCF is still in that position. So that is one particular area that's not particularly great defensively, which, look, that was a concern heading into the season for Oregon State. And at the moment, even if you look at the larger sample size, it frankly still is. Still is. Now, their total offensive numbers, including everything, is pretty good. Even when you take out the Cal Poly game, their total offense, as far as yards go, ranks 4th in the Pac-12 against all FBS opponents. Stanford's ranks dead last. And that does include the UCF game for them. So we can talk about woes of defense or things, but ultimately, Stanford is not doing well offensively, which again furthers my point in our discussion last week and really earlier in the week about Stanford and Oregon. When Stanford right now, what, you think their coaches don't know these statistics? They know that they have to go back to playing possession football because otherwise they will not succeed. Not just in the season, but in any given game. So if you ask me, what do I expect of Oregon State Stanford on Saturday? Stylistically, I'm not getting into picks yet. Just stylistically, I would tell you be prepared to see very much the same thing from Stanford that you saw last week against Oregon. Because I don't think – I'm talking stylistically now.
Right.
Somebody breaks off a long run. Well, I didn't predict that one way or another. But I think this is going to be a bit lower scoring from in general because I think Stanford's going to look to play a lot of possession football. I think they want to put together a string of drives that are 5 and 6 and 7 minutes. And if you do that, particularly on the road, you want to talk about trying to take a crowd out of a game. My goodness. For a game where Oregon State is going to have students back on campus, and frankly, a game that, while look, it's one of the bigger home games that it's got.
Yeah,
and you can legitimately enter Reser Stadium if you're a Beavers fan, feeling like you've got a real shot to win on Saturday. You don't think David Shaw would love nothing more than to go in there and silence a crowd early, not just by scoring, but by just merely bleeding the clock for all it's worth and putting together some ridiculous 17-play, 62-yard, 8.5-minute drive? I mean, I can assure you that's exactly what he's dreaming up.
That's going to be tough on that defense.
I think they're going to do the same thing as last week as far as, look, they get to call the coin toss. If they win the opening coin toss, do not be the least bit surprised if Stanford wants the ball. I think they want to set the tone early and try to wear on a defense immediately. And yes, that's going to ask a lot of Cameron Scarlett, a whole lot. But I think that's exactly what you are looking for in this game if you're Stanford. And if you're Oregon State, look, you've got to be able to do a bit more. You've got to see something from Jamar against better competition and against a very good run defense. And you've got to have another big day. I know it's almost ridiculous to say because it's so obvious, but look, you need Luton to hook up with Hodgins a lot. And I know that Stanford has not necessarily done as well in coverage, and they've gotten beaten pretty good the last couple of weeks. Certain individuals there. But if I'm Stanford, I feel a lot better in this one trying to match up Paulson Adebo heads up on Isaiah Hodgins, regardless of where he lines up on the field, and just let that be what it is and let everybody else handle the rest. I feel a lot better from Stanford about that in this game than I would have several of the prior games. Because fact is, yes, Oregon State does have a few other talented receivers, and they do. But as of right now, I'm sorry, today, none of the others are getting drafted. Today. I'm not telling you that Tyjon Lindsey or some of the others can't, that nothing can change. But I'm telling you, Champ Fleming is not getting drafted today. That ain't happening. So Stanford secondary may be young and recovering and learning on the fly and all those things. But Oregon State's passing attack is a one-man wrecking ball. As far as true challengers, yes, they can put up numbers on Cal Poly, but come on now. Let's be real. It's now Pac-12 play. It's now serious football. It will be interesting. It'll be interesting when we make our picks because this line is only 4.5. So this would be quite I think it will be competitive. I'm not sure which way or the other I'm going to pick on this one, but it will be competitive. So that's what I'm looking for heading into Saturday's game. We will chat a little bit about the women's basketball schedules that were released in the Pac-12 today for both Oregon and Oregon State and everybody else. You're listening to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene. A few updates for you. First, from the Thursday night football game at Lambeau Field where the Packers lead the Eagles 7-0. Packers return man Jamal Williams, who was carted off after taking a helmet-to-helmet hit on a punt return from Eagles defensive lineman Derek Barnett. He has movement in all extremities, feeling in all extremities. So, sounds like a somewhat precautionary situation for Jamal Williams. A lot of people are already pouring out the outcry that while there's a 15-yard penalty for unnecessary roughness, that it should have resulted in an ejection, and I think people have a legitimate gripe there for Barnett because Williams was being held up. The play was absolutely going to be over. There was no need to make any additional hit, let alone a hit that resulted in helmet-to-helmet contact on what was essentially a defenseless player at that point. We'll see what the NFL fine is for that. From Antonio Morales, because Clay Helton just spoke, as we spoke to Antonio earlier, Matt Fink will officially start at Washington for USC. Keaton Slovis has been ruled out. So has, as Antonio had told you, that Tolana Hufanga has been out this week. He is out as well. And Elijah Griffin.
From Corvallis.
Also out this week.
Hufanga.
So you've got 3 starters for USC, including the number 2 quarterback. So now they are officially down to Matt Fink. That is who they will start against Washington. Yeah, that does create quite a situation for USC in this one where, look, I mean, let's put it this way. If SC goes up to Seattle with its number 3 quarterback and without 2 other starters and wins as a 10.5-point underdog, not only is Clay Helton just saved his job and owes Matt Fink a humongous bill of thanks for that, but we're going to start talking about why is Chris Peterson a habitual underachiever? Because he will have lost 2 home games at that point as a home favorite. One in what has been a close and competitive, low-scoring series the past 2 years, but this one would be, frankly, unforgivable if Washington were to lose this game.
I don't think
mercy.
I don't think the Dogs, no pun intended, would start coming out on Peterson unless he lost that one and the Oregon game, because the Oregon game to that fan base means more.
Oh, of course it does. Of course, I'm talking about a guy who, look, entering last year, that was a team who was supposed to be the playoff team and everything else. They lost it in week 1. They lost to Oregon. They only winning the Apple Cup salvaged the season. If they lost that would have been how many losses? Then they go to the Rose Bowl, whoop-de-doo, and take one on the chin there in a horrible way. So that's just, nobody can count on Washington to come up with a clutch win. I'm sorry. They can't. Point to me one clutch win that he has had in his tenure there. When was the last time that Washington beat a non-conference Power 5 opponent that was worth a darn? You got to go back a ways. Quite a ways.
You've got me on this one.
Yeah. So, bottom line, I'm not suggesting that Washington is going to lose. I'm saying if it did, that would be a real indictment on the situation, because USC is going in wounded does not begin to encapsulate the severity of the situation for them, unfortunately for the Trojans. Quickly, on the women's basketball scheduling front, Pac-12 announced those today. The news of the day for Oregon's purposes is that, yes, the long-rumored and insinuated exhibition with the U.S. women's national team will happen on November the 9th. That is, technically speaking, before the season opener on November the 11th against Northeastern, which, of course, you all knew about because Kelly Graves told you that here on this program 7 weeks ago. So you knew about that. And Utah State and Texas Southern, which come after that. Now, the game at Syracuse is on Sunday, November the 24th. Unfortunately for you folks out here, that game is going to be on ACC Network.
Oh, no. Oh, jeez.
So, frankly, I'm not even sure how I'm going to be able to watch that game. But, yes, that game is going to be on ACC Network on that Sunday. I have no idea how folks out here are going to be able to watch that. I don't know yet. Don't ask me yet. It's in 2 months. I'll find out for you between now and then, but I don't know yet.
I don't think Comcast even has it.
I don't think anybody has it out here yet.
Yeah.
At all. Other than, again, like Dish or Direct, and I don't know if one of them has. I can't keep track anymore. Anyway, the Paradise Jam, Oklahoma State, UT Arlington, Louisville, as you already know. South Dakota State, Long Beach State, UC Riverside, Kansas State. These games, again, largely were already mentioned and reported previously. Those all coming in December. Here's the sequence of the Pac-12 opponents for the Ducks. It's Colorado, Utah, at Arizona State, at Arizona, Stanford and Cal. Stanford on January 16th, that game on either ESPN or ESPN2. That is a Thursday night game. Mm-hmm. The first of the Civil War matchups, Friday, January 24th, here in Eugene, 7 o'clock. That is carried on Pac-12 Network Oregon. Sunday in Corvallis, 1 o'clock on ESPN2. Then the Ducks go to Utah and Colorado. They then go to UConn. That will be part of an ESPN Big Monday, though the schedule didn't list that for some reason. Arizona State, at UCLA, at USC, at Cal, at Stanford on Monday the 24th of February on ESPN2. Washington State and Washington. We will mention OSU's schedule and pick up on that next week because I will be taking off tomorrow as this is a bye week for Oregon. We will call it a bye Friday for me, but we thank all our guests this week, including Antonio Morales yet again and Mike Vorel yet again. You've been listening to the James Crepea Show here on Fox Sports Eugene. Hit the lights and lock the doors.